The Daily Jaws 50th Anniversary interview series is a collection of amazing conversations exploring the legacy of Steven Spielberg's screen adaptation of Jaws through the eyes of the fans. We'll be talking to famous fans, shark experts, people whose lives have been changed by the movie, and those that were there that helped to make the film. We'll also be telling you about two amazing organisations that are very close to our hearts. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago and it's gone straight to my head. It is to cinema almost exactly what Herman Melville's Moby Dick is to literature. If you've got an oxygen tank, Roy Scheider, and a loaded rifle, you could be in a canoe and it's all going to work out.
Hey guys, it's Ross over at the Daily Jaws with another exclusive 50th anniversary interview. Today's guest is a screenwriter and novelist whose screen adapted work includes Horns and the brilliant The Black Phone. However, today he's here to talk all about Jaws. Guys, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the one and only Joe Hill to the Daily Jaws. Hi Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be talking to you. I have to say, the Daily Jaws is the single best reason to be on Instagram, and is my favorite thing on social media. And it's an honor. It's an honor to talk to you guys.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, we appreciate how busy you must be. But obviously, it's 50 years since Jaws the movie came out. I mean, that just seems ridiculous to say. When was the first time you saw the movie, and what was your memories of that experience?
So my dad, I think it's very possible that I saw it at a drive-in theater when it came out because it was the 70s and parenting was very, very different. And, parents thought nothing of throwing their kids in the back seat and going to the drive-in to see The Exorcist. But I don't remember that. If I did see it on the, I think if I did see it on the big screen, when it was on its initial release, I have no memory of that. What I do remember was in the early 1980s, very early 1980s, my dad brought home a video disc player, which was the forerunner of the modern DVD players. Mm-hmm. And you could get movies for it, and the movies came on these giant silver platters, the size of LPs. And you just looked at them and they looked like the future. They just looked like they had come from a different, the 21st century. And it had about 20 minutes of film on each side. So you'd watch 20 minutes, then you'd flip the disc over, and then 20 minutes later, you'd have to put the whole disc in. So you were watching in a very broken way. Mm-hmm. When my dad brought home his Panasonic video disc player, he brought home 3 movies to watch on it. The 3 movies he brought home to watch on it were Duel, Jaws, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. and the summer he brought it home, we watched those movies again and again and again. And the thing about it is, we live in such a different world now. It's hard to remember than the very early, late 70s, early 80s, when you saw a movie in the theaters, that was the first time you were seeing it, and it was usually the last time you saw it, unless it aired in a highly edited version on TV, because there was no method of home replay. There were no videotape recorders. There were no DVD players. There were certainly, we were decades away from, internet and streaming. And so the video disc player that he brought home was right at the very vanguard of the home video revolution. And so having that experience of being able to watch a film again was a complete shock and a revelation. This totally amazing to be able to deep dive into a film, to really discover nuances that you would never see on a first or even second viewing. The other thing I remembered is that gradually the disc got mixed up, and so we would watch 40 minutes of Jaws and 40 minutes of Close Encounters, and and it kind of didn't matter. I mean, you were just like so blown away by the fact that you could rewatch a segment. Was astonishing. So that's my memory of discovering Jaws, and it's very tied into feeling a connection with my own father, and feelings about what it was like to be a little kid and discovering the magic of cinema and the magic of narrative. It's no surprise that the movie means as much as it does to me, and I think that's true of a lot of guys my age, actually.
Yeah. It really does echo a lot of what a lot of the other guests have been saying as well, in terms of just being able to watch it at home and study it. Not maybe just Jaws, but movies in general. And not one of my first memories of watching Jaws, but one of my happiest memories of watching Jaws was when the first time I got to watch it on DVD. Because up until that point, I've been watching it on a worn out VHS, literally again and again and again. And for my
Mm.
18th birthday, my dad turned up at my house and he said, "Happy birthday." And he gave me the Jaws DVD. And I'm like, "Oh, this is amazing. Only one problem, Dad. I don't have a DVD player." He goes, "I got you that as well." And I'm like, "Oh my God."
Oh,
So I was like, absolutely amazing. And literally, I went out for my birthday party, had a great time, came back. First thing I did, unpacked the DVD player, hooked it up, put in Jaws, and I started to not just watch Jaws, but study it in clarity and being able to pause it and really examine the movie and understand just that immense level of craft that was happening before my very eyes. So I'd already seen it as an entertainment, and then it's craft from now on. And that seems to be another thing that echoes through a lot of these conversations, particularly with creators, writers, filmmakers, and whoever else. Um, but I'm really
Ross, how many
fascinated.
times have you seen it? Ross, how many times have you seen it?
Oh
Over 100?
man, yeah, easy, easy. I've probably seen it close to, I reckon, maybe 500 times. However, there is one person on the Daily Jaws that I think possibly has watched it more, and that's Dean, who is our co-writer. He does a lot of the blogging for us, and he had to watch Jaws basically on repeat for about 4, maybe 5 months when he was putting together our Jaws remake, which we did for COVID back in 2020. So, are you familiar with the Jaws remake?
No, I don't. No, I haven't seen
Uh,
it.
so
What is it?
so basically, this was around sort of 2020 when lockdown was happening. And there was a lot of people just sitting there sort of twiddling their thumbs. There wasn't a huge amount to do, ourselves included. And Dean had the idea. He goes, "Well, why don't we try and remake Jaws for a bit of fun? Like, he and I." And I'm like, "Well, why don't we expand it out and get everybody involved?" So through the website and the social media, we just said, "Guys, we want to try and remake Jaws for a bit of fun for
I
lockdown."
I do
And it
remember
was,
this. Yes,
yeah,
I do remember this. Yeah, I was going to contribute. To be honest, I think I wanted to contribute, and then I just never, the time. You just never have as much time as you want to have.
well,
Uh,
here's a question for you. If you were going to contribute a scene to the Jaws remake, what scene would you pick to do?
um, what would I want to? That's a good one. What would I want to do? Probably I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I had a little drink about an hour ago, and it's gone straight to my head. Probably that.
Sold. We can
Isn't
edit you
that
back
isn't
into
that
that.
isn't that conversation, around the table, the emotional heart of the film?
Yeah, I think so.
That's when you get right to the core of it. That's the emotional heart of the film. That
This is
scene.
kind of where Brody has been trying to get to. I think that the whole movie, and I think there's so many different ways that people have interpreted the characters, and I have my own personal favorite moment in Jaws. But I think you're right. That is because for me, when you look at Jaws, it's 2 hours 4 minutes of just cinematic perfection, moment after moment after moment, scene after scene after scene. Do you have a particular favorite moment, or do you think that would be it?
It's tough. It's tough to to dissect the film
Mm,
into a favorite moment. I mean, probably yes. Okay, yes, probably I do have a favorite moment. It's when Brody is sitting with his son and he steeples his fingers together, and
mm,
his son imitates every gesture that he does, and it never fails to touch me very deeply. Never fails to leave me feeling deeply moved.
mhm,
Um, and I just feel like I have seen 5,000 movies in my life, conservatively. I have seen so many movies in my life. And it's amazing how rarely anyone ever gets kids right. And in his first films, his first half dozen films, Spielberg never got kids wrong. Not
mm,
once. The children in Jaws, the children in Close Encounters, it was real life. It was like almost, it was, it was more emotionally powerful than if you just pointed a camera at a real family. But it
mm,
was like documentary,
mm.
of childhood in the 70s. And I love that. So yeah,
Yeah,
that would probably be. What's your favorite moment?
that moment.
Yeah.
So many
I think
people have said that moment, and it's such a strange thing to say because people, it's almost they forget about that moment, but then you watch it again when you're older, And it's like, wow, there's a huge amount this movie is trying to say to me, whether it's through the shark, the adults, the kids. It's trying to tell me something. It's an amazing moment.
I don't think it's right to say, critics will create lists of like the 100 greatest films ever made, the 100
Mm,
greatest horror films ever made, the
mm,
100 greatest whatever, I think there is no single greatest film of all time because your greatest and my greatest might be different. Actually, your greatest and my greatest aren't different, but generally speaking, you know, there are certain things in certain films that just speak to people very deeply.
yeah.
The Wizard of Oz is like that. The Godfather is like that. Um,
Hmm.
Still, I think, in general, it's safe to say that Jaws is one of the five or six most broadly loved films ever made,
Mm,
and has kind of surpassed just being a film. And I will say, for years, critics used to insist that Citizen Kane was the greatest film ever made, but just don't know anyone who feels about Citizen Kane what
mm,
so many people feel about Jaws.
mm,
That there is this deep emotion there. It's playing these deep emotional chords that resonate
mm.
with so many people. And to me, that's the hallmark of greatness.
Yeah. And it's something again. I mean, the thing that I'm really finding in these conversations with people is that they're all kind of saying the same thing in very different ways. Everyone brings something very personal to the movie, but they also take away something very personal as well. And I think that's the hallmark of a classic. You know, how much is the audience involved, and where what's the balance of that give and take? And I think the other fascinating thing about Jaws, because obviously it was made during a very I think for me, probably the most influential time in terms of American cinema, in terms of that period, probably of the
Right.
70s, maybe into the early 80s, but probably more specific on the
Scorsese,
70s.
Coppola,
Oh,
Spielberg. It
well,
was this
those,
eruption of independent filmmaking that had big studio budgets. So there were all
yeah.
these independent, very personal visions coming across that
Hmm.
were backed with big studio money.
Yeah, and these voices have continued to echo over the last sort of 50 years because people are still not necessarily trying to imitate their work, but they can spot good work and how to deliver a good story. And it's great to see the not even that they're trying to imitate these filmmakers, but you can see the stuff that they've started and it's being championed by the really great ones. And hopefully we're in the midst of some future classics now. Um, One of the funny things that I try to talk to my guests about with Jaws, and I get a different answer for this all the time, is it's very difficult to pin down the genre of Jaws because
Mm.
some people say it's a horror, some people say it's a thriller, some people say it's an adventure film, some people say it's just a comedy, sometimes it's a political comment. I mean, what do you think Jaws is genre wise, and what do you think it's actually trying to tell us if there is a message there?
There's a movie about The Shining called something like Room 238, and
Mm,
it takes a deep dive into all these insane conspiracy theories around the secret meaning of Kubrick's The Shining.
mm,
Um, I'm glad that Jaws is refreshingly free of anything like that.
mm,
It is the greatest horror film ever made. It's also the greatest adventure film ever made. It is one of the best films ever made about small town life. About life in a coastal New England. It's one of the greatest New England stories.
mm,
It is to cinema uh, almost exactly what Herman Melville's Moby Dick is to literature. It's almost a one-to-one, match, and um, it just has so much to offer the viewer. It's so rich emotionally. Its characters are so vivid and distinct and particular and powerfully imagined, that it can't be contained to a single genre, a single narrow category because it bursts right past those limits. Um,
mm.
but fundamentally, Spielberg was trying to create a Hitchcockian tale of suspense, and that it excels at that, and that's what it is. So,
Mm.
call it what you want, but it is many things at a very high level.
Yeah. And do you think that there's a key message in Jaws? Do you think he's trying to tell us anything particular?
I mean, it's not a mess. I'm always wary of stories that have a message to impart, because I think, you know, stories are more interesting when they're not so, willfully moralistic, when they're not trying to beat you over the head with a lesson.
Mm,
Uh, you know, uh, that's not very interesting to me. But inevitably, any great work of art has some things to say. There's that impulse to ignore threat when your bottom line is threatened.
mm,
When your bottom line is being menaced. Um, the real fear that the seaside community feels at losing the summer business. It's that fear is so intense. People not being able to sell beach towels and suntan lotion and sandwiches and all the rest of it, that they almost pretend, they just don't want to believe that something could happen, that would make their business concerns irrelevant, something so terrible. And I
mm,
think that's interesting, the way we deny, we're faced with something really threatening, but we sort of set into a state of denial because we don't want to think about what it would cost us to deal with it.
mm,
So there's certainly that. Um, but but I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like that's very lightly there. That's a
mm,
very light bit of subtext, and certainly not. The film is bigger than that.
mm,
It has things to say about you know have complex male relationships. The way relationships can be between men can be, you know, fatherly in one instant
mm,
and brotherly in the next and
mm,
adversarial a moment later.
mm.
There's that great moment with, when Robert Shaw grabs Dreyfus's hand, says, "You got soft hands, you got city hands."
He had city hands, Mr. Hooper.
And there's 100 years of class resentment in New England summed up in that one moment of confrontation. By the
Mm,
way, let me just while riffing here, one of the reasons to me the film matters so much is because Robert Shaw somehow captured something about the soul of New England, the soul of working class seacoast New England.
mm,
Uh, and a part of me thinks, how did he get it so right? You know, how did he see us so clearly?
mm.
Um, I think part of the answer to that is that Robert Shaw wasn't just an actor; he was a writer. He wrote
Yeah.
several really well-regarded novels, and he was clearly a keen observer of
Mm,
his environment and other people. And that comes through in his performance as Quint, which was not just a masterpiece of acting, but was at
mm.
least slightly a masterpiece of writing and the writer's instincts. And of
Yeah.
course, that brings us around to the question of who wrote the famous monologue.
I think
Who
it,
who
but I
wrote the
think
mo- who wrote the Indianapolis monologue?
to be honest, at this point, you could take credit for writing the Indianapolis speech right now. I think
I'm the only
honestly,
one
it's
who hasn't. I'm just
yeah,
about the only writer who hasn't. For the record,
it's
for the record, I have thought there's all these great mysteries around. Jaws is full of fascinating mysteries. One
mm,
of them is the mystery of who wrote the greatest monologue in film history. And even if you don't think Jaws is the best film ever made, um, I think almost everyone would agree that the Indianapolis monologue is the greatest and most quoted, most memorable monologue in the history of cinema, world cinema, anything.
mm,
And so there's been all this debate about who wrote it. For the record, I've done a lot of reading on the subject, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, but I've also read Robert Shaw's writing, and it is my belief that it is mostly Shaw, that Shaw mostly nailed it. The
mm.
other person who is a candidate didn't John Borman take a whack at it?
Howard Sackler, John Milius, Steven Spielberg himself, Carl
John
Gottlieb.
Milius. It was Milius. It was
Mm,
Milius. John Milius. It's possible. It's possible it's possible that Shaw worked with a little bit of what Milius came up with. It's John Milius
mm,
was the name I was looking for. It's possible that Shaw was riffing off because I'm pretty familiar with John Milius's work as well,
mm,
and it has it had so okay, all right. This is a wicked tangent, but stay with me for a second.
Go for it.
I read a thing about an art historian who was presented with a Caravaggio that had been a lost Caravaggio that was going to be hung in, one of the great New York City museums, and it had just been recently discovered in a cellar in France, and the art expert took a look at this painting and felt a sense of revulsion. He couldn't explain it. As a
Hmm.
perfect Caravaggio scene,
Mm.
but just looking at it gave him a bad taste in the mouth. And he
Okay.
said, "I don't think that's a Caravaggio." And the museum was like, "We have the paperwork to prove its provenance. There's absolutely no question that this is a real Caravaggio." And the art historian said, "I don't think it is. I'm sorry, but it's giving me a sick feeling in my stomach to look at it." So they went back and went over the paperwork, and they
Mm.
also, I think, they carbon dated it or something, and it was a forgery. Turned out it wasn't a Caravaggio. His
Wow.
instinct, he was just so familiar, he just so loved the work of Caravaggio
Mm.
that he could feel it was wrong, even though it looked perfect. But he could just feel it didn't have the
Yeah.
it didn't. I'm not claiming that I have that expertise about Robert Shaw's writing. Not at all. But it has the feel of Robert Shaw. You can't prove that he wrote the monologue, but it
Mm.
feels like the kind of thing he wrote. And it also feels a little bit like John Milius, if you're familiar with like the film he did with Nick Nolte, Return of the King,
Yeah.
some of his other work. My ear feels like those are his words. So
Mm.
anyway,
Wow. Well,
that's my riff on the Indianapolis
it's
monologue.
it's a wonderful theory because again, it's one of those things we might not ever really get to the bottom of. It is touched on in The Shark is Broken, the play of the hat that you are wearing, where Ian Shaw plays his own father, and the two key sources for that play were Robert Shaw's diaries and the Jaws log and other things.
When
So
I saw The
we.
Shark is Broken, it was one of the most powerful and immediate experiences of art that I've had in years. And I go back to it all the time. I was deeply moved by it. I felt like the
Mm.
whole the whole play had been written just for me. Which is one mark of really great art is when you see something and you're like, it's like the guy who wrote that song thinking about me. Of course he wasn't, but it feels incredibly personal. And there's stuff in The Shark is Broken about, Ian Shaw
Mm.
reaching across 50 years to try to see his father clearly,
Mm.
and recognize what his father struggled with, his struggles with alcoholism,
Mm.
his anger, and also his commitment to his craft
Mm.
and his distaste for artistic pretension, and there's attempt to see his father whole, and I just find that tremendously powerful. And you know, we it's sort of the elephant in the room. My dad is the novelist Stephen King. His work has meant the world to me, and he's one of my best friends. Thank God he didn't die when I was, just a little kid, which is what happened to Ian. Ian
Mm.
lost his father very young, you
Mm.
know. But I also I related to The Shark is Broken so powerfully because I also, you know, look up to my dad's incredible body of work and have
Mm.
thought often about his own struggles, whether it was coming from this sort of gothic poverty as a child, his own struggles with alcohol,
Mm.
in very much the same time period. And it just made a really, really powerful connection with me. If you ask me what's the best thing to come out of Jaws, so there have been all these secondary works of art, some fascinating secondary works of art. If Jaws is the landmark, the next thing that I think is most interesting to descend from it would be the play, The Shark is Broken.
Mm.
More interesting than
Wow.
any of the sequels or any of the other shark movies or, any writing, it's The Shark is Broken.
Yeah, and I think I mean that is such a huge topic that we could talk about in terms of just the theme of father and sons, those relationships between men in Jaws, even though it's
Yeah.
between three men on the boat. Initially, it's about his relationship with his sons. And for me, Jaws is also about legacy, because if Brody has a lot of people, he's got a lot of eyes on him at that point. It's not just the town, it's not just the mayor, it's not just Hooper, it's his sons. And it's like,
That's right.
what example do I set for them if I don't deal with this problem? And it's when it becomes personal for him, when Michael has his shark encounter in the estuary. It's like, okay, now I can really genuinely empathize with how this is impacting other people, because there's been a certain level of distance with Brody up until that point. But as soon as it gets into his waters, his family, okay, I now need to
Right.
step up and take care of this. I just bear with me just 1 second, Joe. I'm just having a slight technical problem.
Oh, no problem.
Bear with me just 1 second. I see the problem. Hang on. Here we go.
Surprise. I love
How
that
are
you love
you?
this movie. I love that you love this movie. How cool is that?
What can you say? It's if you look behind me, I've
Yeah.
got the poster hanging
Oh,
over the
yeah, I
stadium.
see it. I see it. And you can see it from everywhere in the room.
Yeah, pretty
Just
much.
about. Yeah,
Pretty
I get
much.
it.
Because it's my landmark, That's the story.
I get it. How
That's
blessed I
that's
get
the
it.
story that taught me. That's the story that taught me. How are you doing?
I'm good. Listen, I'm still here. I'm gonna I look like a bus hit me, but I'm gonna be 80, Joe.
Jeff, let me share it. Let me share a potentially unpopular opinion in some quarters.
Yeah.
Jaws is the greatest shark movie ever made. Jaws 2 is the second greatest shark movie ever made.
I totally agree. And I just had a memorial.
And you know who was great in it? You were.
You're very kind. Oh, Joe, this has been a pleasure. I'm so sorry I have to run. But you made my day, kid.
Oh, back at you. You have no idea how awesome it has been to talk to you. Feels very unreal, actually. I'm starstruck.
I love you, Joe Hill. You were terrific, and you made my day. Look, see what the age has done now? Shit.
Come on, you're looking great. Come on, you're looking great.
Thanks,
looking great.
Kid. I hope I see you again.
Jeff,
Bye, Joe.
take care of yourself.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Ross.
Jeffrey. Take care, mate. Bye. Hey guys, it's Ross. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode. Bruce and I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about a couple of the organisations that we've been working with, and also some of the new products you can find in our store. Minorities in Shark Sciences, or MISS for short. A non-profit founded in 2020 that champions diversity in shark, ray and marine sciences. MISS creates equitable opportunities for historically underrepresented communities through hands-on programs and believes that diverse scientists bring diverse ideas, driving the innovation essential for ocean conservation. Representation matters, and MISS is making sure the next generation sees a place for themselves in marine biology. Learn more and support their mission at missalesmo.org. The mission of the Tourette Association of America is to provide help and hope to those affected by Tourette syndrome, tic disorders, and associated conditions through awareness, research, and support. It's the only national organisation serving the community and works to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support to patients and families impacted by Tourette syndrome and tic disorders. To this end, the Tourette Association of America directs a network of 31 chapters, 83 support groups, and recognises 18 centres of excellence across the country. It's a non-profit organisation and is extremely close to the heart of not just Jeffrey Kramer, but also his family. The Daily Jaws store is home to some of the world's most exciting Jaws products, including screen-accurate barrels and tanks, a chalkboard shark shadowcaster, a yellow barrel koozie, an orca transom and 3 yellow barrel keychains, and much more. Visit store.thedailyjaws.com. For non-US orders, please email orders@thedailyjaws.com. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
Ross, I'm thunderstruck. That's the most amazing. It's like meeting a character from the Bible or something. I'm going to be buzzing for the rest of the week.
Well, I'm really glad. I'm really glad. We try
what
to
an amazing thing to have done.
Well, we're trying to get Jeffrey onto as many calls as possible so that people who love the movie can connect with him and ask him questions. And you guys just had literally just sitting back and watching you guys talk was brilliant, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to celebrate the movie, not just by exploring people's love about it, but also having them connect with someone who was directly involved in the movie. And Jeffrey's been amazing.
When he first popped on, I was having about 30 seconds of, is that who's that? Wait a minute. Is that who I think? No. Yes. Oh my God. It was like I instantly recognized him, but then my brain refused to accept it.
This is kind of how it's been feeling for me with a lot of these interviews, to be honest. And I'll be completely honest with you. This is complete disclosure. By coincidence, I am actually reading The Shining at the moment, and I didn't realize that the book was dedicated to you until I opened it up, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just crazy.
So when I started publishing as Joe Hill, because I didn't want to get published because I had a famous dad. So I kept it a secret for years and years. And racked up a bunch of rejection letters, racked up 1,000 rejection letters, wrote 4 books I couldn't sell. When my first book sold, 20th Century Ghost it came out from a small press in England, in Whitby, PS Publishing, and the pen name began to break up pretty quickly afterwards. And one of the reasons why is because I was writing as Joe Hill, and the super fans remembered that Joe Hill King, that The Shining was directed to Joe Hill King, who shines on. And so there were Stephen King, and I was writing ghost stories. So there were Stephen King super fans who were like reading 20th Century Ghost and going, Joe Hill. But then the other thing is when you sell a book, your job is to, when you publish a book comes out and it's got your name on the cover, it's your job to go out and sell it. So you do events, you go to conventions, you go to bookstores and stuff, and pretty quickly people began to figure out who my dad was because of my face. They were like looking at my face, going, "Does he kind of look a little?" And actually, even then, it was such the early days of the internet. I was able to clamp down on it for a while. Like someone would post something on their blog saying, "I'm pretty sure Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, and here's why," and they'd lay out their evidence. And then I'd email them through the blog, and I'd say, "You got me, but I'm trying to go as far as I can on the pen name without it becoming a big deal. Is there any way you take that blog post down?" And every single time, people were glad to do it. They were glad to delete the blog post, delete they were just psyched to be in on the secret. And they're like, I understand what you're doing. I respect that. It's crazy to think, though, there are people who feel about Kubrick's Jaws what we feel about Kubrick's Shining, what we feel about Spielberg's Jaws, which is nuts to me, because unlike my dad, I do like the movie. I do like Kubrick's Shining. I think it's a completely separate thing from the book, but the movie is so cold. I mean, it is literally cold because it's set in a frozen Colorado winter, but it's also just emotionally cold. And I don't know, how does something so cold become your favorite film? Don't you want something big beating heart, and some blood in its veins? I don't know.
The other thing as well, and I know obviously, you've done the right thing by trying to sort of make, your own career without sort of, using the King name and your dad now.
Yeah.
But there is something I do need to ask about your dad, because I know, as I say, I'm a fan of his work. I think he's a legend. However, he went massively, dialed up to 11 in my estimation when I think he tweeted it or put it on social media somewhere that he voted, "You're going to need a bigger boat" as the greatest line in cinema. And we wrote a story about this because we were just like, holy cow, that's very, very high praise. What was it like? Because I'm assuming you guys have watched the movie together. What's it like watching the movie with your dad? And what maybe his thoughts on the movie?
Well, it's funny. You saying that makes me want to sit down and watch it with him. And I probably haven't watched it with him since I was a kid. There was that summer we watched it over and over and over again, but I'm not sure we've ever watched it together since then. But I wouldn't want to speak for my dad. He has his own relationship with the film and so on. But those 3 films he brought home way back in like 1980 or 1981, something like that, Duel, Jaws, and Close Encounters, I think those 3 films are as close to his heart as they are to mine. that there is something, if you're a person who cares about narrative, if you're a person who writes stories of suspense
Mm.
and peril, those three seem like fundamental textbooks. They are like, your PhD course
Mm.
in crafting the thriller. And there's I think if you can pick apart the mechanism of those films, you will know just about everything you need to know to write a story of suspense.
Mm.
Uh,
What's,
so yeah,
what's because obviously you're not just a novelist, as we said at the beginning. You're also a screenwriter, or you've had books sort of adapted for the screen.
I've been lucky enough to have a bunch of stuff adapted.
Mm.
Probably Black Phone, most notably, by
Mm.
Scott Derrickson, who is got an unbelievable heart, is a terrific storyteller.
Mm.
And I had me and my soul brother Gabriel Rodriguez spent 7-8 years doing a comic book called Lock and Key, and that was made into a Netflix show. Had a few seasons on Netflix. So I've had a few stuff, and I wrote for that. The TV show I did some screenwriting for.
Mm.
Uh, More recently, I'm just turning in a script on things. I do the screenwriting because I love films. That's one, but also, that's where my health insurance comes from. You know, the I have kids, and it's important to make sure everyone can afford to see the doctor and stuff, and so I have to write a screenplay every year to keep that Hollywood health insurance coming. um I read a thing years ago about M. Night Shyamalan, who, his office where he writes his scripts has movie posters on the wall:
Mm.
Jaws, Encounters, and a few others. And he said he has these. They're not his movies; they're other people's movies. And he says, those are, but those are sort of the points on my compass. That's how I orient myself. Is, I've got these films, and I'm like, when I'm stuck, I can sort of think, okay, what about what's the Spielberg and Jaws approach? That kind of
Mm.
thing. Um,
Mm.
and I thought that was such an inspiring thought that I've done the same. And my office is, it's all frame posters of book covers, with only one exception, which is my poster of Jaws over the stairs. Because Jaws is not just a great story; it's the story.
Yeah.
It's sort of that's my doorway to all the other stories.
Mm.
That's sort of my default when I'm thinking about what's the best way to do things. My thoughts naturally turn back to Jaws.
I think that there's a lot of people, writers, filmmakers, whoever, do reference Jaws. Apparently, Steven Soderbergh watches Jaws before every time he makes a movie. And I
I
read an
love
interesting
that.
stat. I love that. We're trying to reach Steven as well because I'd love to talk to him because he's a massive Jaws head. Yeah, it's the thing is though with Jaws. Obviously, we've got three other movies. We've touched on Jaws 2 already. What are your thoughts on Jaws 3D and Jaws: The Revenge? Have you seen those?
So Jaws is the story, and then the shark has broken the play. If anyone is watching this and has a chance to see it, it's worth casting in the rocks to get there. Yeah, it's that good. It really is that good and that special. Um, Jaws 2, in my mind, is the best of the 70s, 80s slasher films, except maybe Nightmare on Elm Street. It's Nightmare on Elm Street's pretty classic.
Mm.
Um, but just Jaws is such a great serial killer. In those hunting the teens down on the regatta. Now I'm going to say something that's going to shock you, and it's probably going to have you abruptly end the interview.
Okay, I'm getting ready to press. I'm getting ready to hang up.
I've never seen Jaws 3, and I've never seen Jaws 4, and I never wanted to. Never wanted to. I didn't want to. I at some point I actually last summer I got as far as getting a copy of Jaws 3 and thinking, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to watch it. It's going to be
Mm.
fun. I'm going to check it out. But then I didn't. I couldn't get psyched. I mean, I've seen some other shark films. I think that, one of the things that Steven Spielberg did was he killed the shark movie as a genre of filmmaking, as a micro genre, because
Mm.
Jaws is so great. There's almost no point in doing another. I thought The Shallows was pretty good.
Mm.
You know, what was really good. You know what was terrific? The 2 minute Lego adaptation of Jaws. The 2-minute Lego adaptation of Jaws was classic. Perfect. The Lego guys always nail it. And also the Lego Orca is terrific. I know so many guys who dropped everything the day that Lego came out to build the Lego Orca. It's really good. It's really terrific. I love it. I think there are still some bits from Jaws that they could do. I don't think they need to be done with Jaws yet. And I also think they could tune up the kit a little bit because the bow of the boat is a little fiddly. Anyway, that's very behind baseball.
Well,
did you build it? You built the Lego Orca, didn't you?
No, I haven't built it yet. However, I do have.
Ross, I got to take back your Jaws card. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, well,
cut up the Jaws card.
Well, the thing is,
have you played the board game many times?
I have. I played it a few times, and it's very.
Always plays the shark.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I almost can't lose.
But with the Jaws Lego, the guy who came up with the initial concept and idea, like the Jaws, the Lego ideas thing, he wrote to us and said, "Look, I think I'll come up with a concept for Lego Jaws. Here are some photos. Take a look at it." I'm like, "This is really cool." And he said, "Look, I'm going to submit it to Lego as an idea. If we get it as far as a survey, would you publish it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, of course." So we published it, and all of a sudden,
you got him over the top.
Yeah,
got him over the top.
Yeah, and I was just like, "This is worth it now." The Daily
This is
Jaws
why I love the Daily Jaws. This is why I love the Daily Jaws. That's odd.
So that's how sort of. But the irony is, I haven't actually yet bought the kit, which is just crazy. So
what they should do is it's going to be the 50th anniversary of Close Encounters of the Third Kind next year, and what they should do is they should do a Lego kit for that. But they should surprise people by putting a giant Tupperware of mashed potatoes in the kit. So that when you get the kit, you got all the little Lego figures, but then you have to build Devil's Tower out of mashed potatoes.
That's the next one. I'm gonna have to start doing the daily encounters. That's the next account to do, isn't it?
Well, there's so much. I mean, there's so much I kind of want to just blurt out. Fans of Jaws who love, for whom Quint is a towering figure, ought to check out a movie called. So I think about a lot of the sort of constellation of other artworks that exist around Jaws. One of them is a movie called Battle of Britain, which was filmed in 1969. It's an ensemble piece. Robert Shaw, Laurence Olivier are in it. That's a great one for fans of Jaws because Robert Shaw is kind of test running Quint there. It's kind of the first draft of Quint, the character that he played in, Battle of Britain. And I'd be very surprised if originally he wanted an actor named for Quint. He wanted Sterling
Hayden. He was looking at
Hayden.
Lee Marvin.
Originally he wanted Sterling Hayden and couldn't get him. So then he turned to Robert Shaw. I would be very surprised if Spielberg essentially didn't want Shaw because of Battle of Britain. If he didn't look at Battle of Britain and think, okay, he could be Quint. And of course, he would have seen Battle of Britain. It's all intertwined. Now I'm sounding like one of these crazy conspiracy guys from Room 238. When Lucas made Star Wars, they hadn't filmed the TIE Fighter X-Wing scenes, and he just intercut dogfights from the Battle of Britain into the film. So when you'd watch the rough cut, you'd be watching the science fiction film, you'd be watching Star Wars, and then suddenly it would cut to Spitfire, taking out Stukas, over southern England and stuff. And famously, a lot of people who watched that early draft of Star Wars thought it was ridiculous. They thought, oh my God, this is going to be the worst movie ever made. Spielberg watched the rough draft of Star Wars and said, it's going to be huge. Because he could see what Lucas wanted those dogfight scenes to look like. He understood what it could be from watching the clips from Battle of Britain.
Yeah. Well, before I started digging into the detail of Jaws and being just a kid who's completely oblivious to how things work, I always thought that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg hated each other because Star Wars beat Jaws in terms of box office and stuff like that. So I'm like, obviously these guys must hate each other, right? Because one's beating the other. And then it's like, no, actually they're really good friends, to the point where George Lucas actually got stuck in the jaws of Bruce the Shark on Martha's Vineyard. I'm like, did you not hear that story?
No, I never heard that.
So So this is the story as it goes. So apparently George Lucas, John Milius, and Steven Spielberg snuck into, I believe it was Shark City, where all the sharks were being looked after. And Spielberg wanted to show George Lucas the shark. So George Lucas was inside having a quick look. Steven Spielberg pulled a lever and the jaws clamped shut, and George Lucas apparently got stuck in there. And then they had to literally pull him out, and they broke the shark doing it, and they ran out like kids. That's what John Milius said on one of the documentaries.
I love that.
Brilliant
That's great.
story. It's like Jaws was just. There's one of my other favorite Jaws stories as well. You may have heard this about the insert shot of the shark ramming the boat just after they finished singing.
Yes.
You heard the story about? Have you heard the story about this?
No, I have not heard the story.
So this is the other thing that I love about Jaws, and it's not just about the fact that it is a Jaws story, but it just shows how you can make a movie. Where at one end you've got an absolute blockbuster movie going into millions of dollars over budget, but for those particular insert shots, because Spielberg realized he needed them, it was a driveway, Joe Alves' driveway. He constructed a piece of wood that he happened to have in his garage, and then what they did is they ran a hose pipe over it with one of them kicking it, and the camera on a driveway. And I'm just like, this is epic special effects, amazing filmmaking, cutting edge that changed cinema forever. And some guys with a camera on a driveway kicking a piece of wood. I'm like, this is.
So I know about the swimming pool. I knew about the decapitated head in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
And Ben Gardner's head floating into the hole. Which does, that sequence. That sequence was almost like Spielberg thought he needed one more scare, and so that's how we got the existence of that sequence. It also introduces a great problem into Jaws, which is. They don't need Quint's boat because they've got Hooper's boat, and Hooper's boat is better.
Okay, right. So this is the next segment of the interview, and I'm really
moving right along. Hooper's boat is better.
We are coming back to this because this is the little segment that I've been asking all of the guests on the series so far. Because every now and again on social media we will post a question that will just be purely for opinion or our own curiosity, but sometimes these accidentally start wars. So we've got 3 or 4 controversial questions for you, Joe.
Hit me with them. I'm ready.
Okay. So the first one, and it relates to the first movie. From the victims in Jaws, so Chrissy, Alex, Pippet, the estuary victim, Ben Gardner, Quint. If you could only save one of them, who would it be and why?
Pippet deserved better. Didn't Pippet deserve better? Justice for Pippet. Hashtag justice for Pippet at last. Someone should remake that would be a good short film. It would be the story of a guy and his dog on the beach on some coastal beach, and you're enjoying the kid, and it's all from the dog's point of view, and then 10 minutes into the short film you realize it's Pippet. And the whole film would build up to Pippet, and we're all dog's eye view, so we're plunging into the water with him, and then
that would be very simple to make. That'd be
a fun short film.
Because the thing is, because the next controversial question, because Pippet,
everyone answers Pippet, doesn't everyone say Pippet?
It's about 50-50 split between 2 characters at the moment. I'm not going to say which. You have to see the series and find out.
Okay,
but the thing is with Pippet, we don't actually see him die. And the Jaws theme isn't playing when he dies, because normally the theme indicates the actual presence of the shark, right? Do you think Pippet might have lived, or do you think he's definitely gone?
Nah, he was like an appetizer. Of course, there was no music or sound or anything like that. It was like the thing about what kind of dog was he?
Black lab, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about a black lab. You can't, they're like potato chips. You eat one, you just want a fistful more, I'm sure the shark was like, little snack to whet the appetite, get you in the mood for a bigger meal. Yeah. No, Pippet's gone, baby.
Okay, next question. Did they need a bigger boat?
Evidently not. Spoiler. Evidently not, based on the way things worked out. It is true that when the shark leaps up onto the boat, you can see that they had trouble with the dimensions, because the boat is really, the shark and the boat are really proportional to one another. There's no way they were ever going to haul that shark up on the boat.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that, but I guess they didn't, because if you've got an oxygen tank Roy Scheider and a loaded rifle, you could be in a canoe and it's all going to work out.
Yeah, that's what you need, Roy Scheider and an air tank.
Yeah,
That's what you need.
exactly. Yeah.
Last controversial question. Why didn't they take Hooper's boat?
The only thing I can speculate, my only real speculation about not taking Hooper's boat is it didn't appear to be equipped to capture a shark. It didn't really seem to be equipped to like possibly reel a shark in a kind of Ernest Hemingway fighting the, the swordfish, old man in the sea kind of way. But given what they knew about the shark, one wonders if if they ever could have really believed that Quint had better equipment or something. So I don't know. The whole Hooper thing, the whole Hooper's,
it's a good point though, isn't it?
Being ignored seems very strange.
Because the thing is though, his boat wasn't made to hunt the shark. It was made to study it. It was made to track it, not kill it. So I think it's a really good point.
What did you just say? It was made to track it. I mean, at least he's got a fish finder on the boat. Quint doesn't even have that.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have a fish finder on his boat.
God.
So
let's try not to ruin the movie. Let's not do that.
I try not to. It's the one thing I try not to think about too much. The other thing about that scare about Ben Gardner's head floating to the hole, there was a big scream. Spielberg was like a scientist. He had a big scream a little later. I think it was, why don't you come back here and chum some of this shit? And the shark comes up. That was a big scream. But he's like, I think I need another scream. So that's when he put Ben Gardner's head in the hole. And he said then he got the biggest scream ever. The Ben Gardner's head was the big scream, but then people didn't scream as loud when he was chumming the shark and the shark comes up. And he says it's because after Ben Gardner's head, they didn't trust me anymore. So they were on guard. They were prepared for it to get worse.
It's very much like the Gene Wilder in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, rather, when he comes out limping and then with a walking stick, and then all of a sudden rolls over and he's suddenly this acrobat. It's like you don't trust this character anymore. So I understand that. And I think as well, those two moments, though, they're scored very differently as well. I think that first one is the Ben Gardner is very eerie. You get something is going to happen. John Williams is indicating it. And then it's this big crescendo when the head pops out to really make that moment sell. With the bigger boat moment, there's no prefix in music. It's just the water and the sound of him chumming, and all of a sudden the shark pops out of the water, and it's the water that makes the noise with a little note from John Williams. So I think the score indicates how we should interpret that moment and how scared we should be, because it's more about this is now game on. This isn't about scaring you. This is letting you know that this shark is here, and now we're getting started. Oh, it's just an incredible film to talk about. So Joe, we're coming to the end of my questions. I don't know if you've got any more for me, but I mean, I think for me, the last one really is, because there's so many different facets to Jaws, as you said. There's the play, there's The Shark is Broken, there's the movie, there's the book, there's the music, there's everything. What do you think is the legacy of Jaws? I mean, why are we sitting here talking about it 50 years later?
Why does it mean so much to us, man? I don't have an easy answer to that question. And if I could answer that question simply, we probably wouldn't love the movie as much as we do. That's why do some stories matter so much? I mean, there's only about 3 or 4 stories, in any medium where I feel anything like what I feel for Jaws. I think it has something about finding your brothers and facing the worst with them, and the possibility of gathering strength from one another. And remember, your brothers don't have to like you. You don't have to get along with your brothers, and I feel like by the time those 3 men are singing together, in the orca, they've become brothers. And it is also there are a few stories that we keep telling again and again in different forms. And Jaws is very much in, you can go all the way back to Beowulf, and Beowulf is a surprisingly similar story about someone setting out into the dark unknown to face an incomprehensibly malevolent beast that has been predating on civilization, on the margins of civilization, and the need to preserve civilization, to preserve the community by facing this malicious force from beyond. And that is just one of these fundamental stories that resonates with us. The possibility that we might be called to do that, to protect our families and our community. It is increasingly, watching the film is also increasingly like time travel. You're looking at a moment, a slice of America that's incredibly vivid and particular and charming and sort of lovely. A small town community where until the shark arrives, the worst thing that happens is some local kids karate chopping a fence. But that only kind of gestures it. I don't know. It was the one reason I guess maybe the biggest reason we're still talking about it is because you got a whole bunch of people from Spielberg to John Williams to Roy Scheider to Robert Shaw to Richard Dreyfuss delivering their career best work all at the same time. But then why? Why did they all deliver their career best work on this film? There was something there before them. There was something at the center of it all that allowed them to do that. I don't know what that was. It's very pure. It's a very pure experience. Wow. I've never tired of it. It's always fresh. It's always fresh for me.
Well, I'm going to sign off in a moment, but do you have any final thoughts for the people watching or listening?
I want to say thank you for introducing me to Jeffrey. That was just astonishing.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
An amazing thing. Everyone out there in, social media land, thanks for following the Daily Jaws and checking it out. It's great that a single work of art can create a whole community around it that's sort of united by, an enthusiasm for, a great story and a shared text, and I love that. So that is something else about Jaws is that I get to share it. I get to share it with all these people. It's a shared language, so that's meaningful. That's why stories exist, is to give us a shared cultural language.
Wow. And Jaws is at the top of the tree on that Mount Everest of stories. What a perfect place to finish. Joe, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate how busy you are, but it's been brilliant to talk Jaws and to meet you.
Here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
Well, guys, as my normal sign-off is, I'll drink to your legs and I'll bid you all a very fond farewell and adieu.
I'll drink to your legs.
Until next time, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye. That's it for today's deep dive into Jaws, the film that turned beaches into no-swim zones and created the summer blockbuster. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow, rate and review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, just when you thought it was safe to stop listening, there's plenty more episodes to come. Please be sure to check out the work of Minorities and Shark Sciences and also the Tourette's Association of America. That's it for now, guys, but I'll catch you next time. I'll drink to your legs.